Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. An Inquiry into Values. Robert M. Persig. Chapter 8. It's about 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'm sitting alongside the machine on a cool, shady curbstone back of a hotel we have found in Miles City, Montana. Sylvia is with Chris at a laundromat doing the laundry for all of us. John is off looking for a duckbill to put on his helmet. He thought he saw one at a cycle shop when we came to town yesterday, and I'm about to sharpen up the engine a little bit. Feeling good now. We got in here in the afternoon and made up for a lot of sleep. It was a good thing we stopped. We were so stupid with exhaustion we didn't know how tired we were. When John tried to register rooms, he couldn't even remember my name. The desk girl asked us if we owned those groovy, dreamy motorcycles outside the window, and we both laughed so hard she wondered what she had said was wrong. It was just a numbskull laughter from too much fatigue. We'd have been more glad to leave them parked and walk for a change. And baths. In a beautiful, cold, old, enameled cast-iron bathtub that crouched on lion's paws in the middle of a marble floor just waiting for us. The water was so soft it felt as if I would never get the soap off. Afterward, we walked up and down the main streets and felt like a family. On this machine, I've done the tuning so many times it's become ritual. I don't have to think much about how to do it anymore. Just mainly look for anything unusual. The engine has picked up a noise that sounds like a loose tappet, but could be something worse, so I'm going to tune it now and see if it goes away. Tappet adjustment has to be done with the engine cold, which means wherever you park it for the night is where you work on it the next morning, which is why I'm on a shady curbstone back of a hotel in Miles City, Montana. Right now the air is cool and the shade will be and will be for an hour or so until the sun gets around the tree branches, which is good for working on cycles. It's important not to tune these machines in direct sun or late in the day when your brain gets muddy, because even if you've been through it 100 times, you should be alert and looking for things. Not everyone understands what a completely rational process this is, the maintenance of a motorcycle. I think it's some kind of a knack or some kind of affinity for machines and operation. They are right, but the knack is almost purely a process of reason, and most of the troubles are caused by what old-time radio men called a short between the earphones, failures to use the head properly. A motorcycle functions entirely in accordance with the laws of reason, and a study of the art of motorcycle maintenance is really a miniature study of the art of rationality itself. I said yesterday that the ghost of rationality is what Phaedrus cursed, and what led to his insanity. But to get into that, it's vital to stay with down-to-earth examples of rationality, so as to not get lost in generalities no one else can understand. Talk about rationality can get very confusing unless the things with which rationality deals are also included. We're at the classic romantic barrier now, where on one side we see a cycle as it appears immediately, and this is an important way of seeing it, and where on the other side we can begin to see it as the mechanic does in terms of underlying form, and this is an important way of seeing things too. These tools, for example, this wrench has a certain romantic beauty to it, but its purpose is always purely classical. It's designed to change the underlying form of the machine. The porcelain inside this first plug is very dark. That is classically as well as romantically ugly, because it means the cylinder is getting too much gas and not enough air. The carbon molecules of the gasoline aren't finding enough oxygen to combine with, and they're just sitting here loading up in the plug. Coming into town yesterday, the idle was loping a little bit, which is a symptom of the same thing. Just to see if it's just the one cylinder that's rich, I check the other one. They're both the same, and I get out a pocket knife, grab a stick lying in the gutter, and whittle down the end to clean out the plugs, wondering what could be the cause of the richness. That wouldn't have anything to do with the rods or valves, and the carbs rarely go out of adjustment. The main jets are oversized, which causes the richness at high speeds, but the plugs were a lot cleaner than this before, with the same jets. Mystery. You're always surrounded by them, but if you tried to solve them all, you'd never get the machine fixed. There's no immediate answer, so I just leave it as a hanging question. The first tappet is right on, no adjustment required. So I move on to the next. Still plenty of time before the sun gets past those trees. I always feel like I'm in church when I do this. The gauge is some kind of religious icon, and I'm performing a holy rite with it. It is a member of a set called precision measuring instruments, which in a classic sense has a profound meaning. In a motorcycle, this precision isn't maintained for any romantic or perfectionist reasons. It's simply that the enormous forces of heat and explosive pressure inside this engine can only be controlled through the kind of precision these instruments give. When each explosion takes place, it drives a connecting rod into the crankshaft with a surface pressure of many tons per square inch. If the fit of the rod in the crankshaft is precise, the explosion force will be transferred smoothly and the metal will be able to stand it. But if the fit is loose and distance of only a few thousandths of an inch before the force will be delivered suddenly, like a hammer blow, and the rod bearing the crankshaft and surface will be pounded flat, creating a noise which first sounds like a loose tappets. That's the reason I'm checking it now. If it is the loose rod and I try to make it to the mountains without an overhaul, it will soon get louder and louder until the rod tears itself free, slams into the spinning crankshaft, and destroys the engine. Sometimes broken rods will pile right down through the crankcase and dump all the oil onto the road. And all you can do then is start walking. But all this can be prevented with a few thousandths of an inch fit which precision measuring instruments give. And this is their classical beauty. Not what you see, but what they mean. What they are capable of in terms of control and underlying form. The second tappet's fine. I swing over to the street side of the machine and start the other cylinder. Precision instruments are designed to achieve an idea, dimensional precision, whose perfection is impossible. There is no perfectly shaped part of the motorcycle and never will be. But when you come close to these instruments, when you come as close as these instruments take you, remarkable things happen, and you go flying across the countryside under a power that would be called magic if it were not completely rational in every way. It's the understanding of this rational intellectual idea that's fundamental. John looks at the motorcycle and he sees steel in various shapes and has negative feelings about these steel shapes and turns off the whole thing. I look at the shapes of the steel and how I see these ideas. He thinks I'm working on parts. I'm working on concepts. He was talking about these concepts yesterday when I said that a motorcycle can be divided according to its components and according to its functions. When I said that, suddenly I created a set of boxes with the following arrangement. The motorcycle splits into two sections, components and functions. When I said the components may be subdivided into a power assembly and a running assembly, suddenly appear some more little boxes. Motorcycle splits into components and functions. Component splits into power assembly and running assembly. When you see that every time I made a further division, up came more boxes based on these divisions until I had a huge set of pyramid of boxes. Finally, you see that while I was splitting the cycle up finer and finer pieces, I was also building a structure. The structure of concepts is formally called a hierarchy, and since ancient times it has been basic structure for all of Western knowledge. Kingdoms, empires, churches, armies, all have been structured in hierarchies. Modern businesses are structured this way. Tables of contents of reference material are also structured. Mechanical assemblies, computer software, all scientific and technical knowledge is so structured. So much so that in some fields such as biology, the hierarchy of kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species is almost an icon. The box motorcycle contains the box's components and functions. The box components contains the box's power assembly and running assembly, and so on. There are many other kinds of structures produced by other operators, such as causes, which produce long chain structures of the form A causes B, which causes C, which causes D, and so on. A functional description of the motorcycle uses the structure. The operators exists, equals, and implies produce still other structures. These structures are normally interrelated in patterns and paths so complex and so enormous that no one person can understand more than a small part of them in his lifetime. The overall name of these interrelated structures, the genus of which the hierarchy and containment structure of causation are just species, is system. The motorcycle is a system, a real system. To speak of certain government and establishment institutions as the system is to speak correctly, since these organizations are founded upon the same structural conceptual relationships as a motorcycle. They are sustained by structural relationships even when they have lost all of their meaning and purpose. People arrive at a factory and perform a totally meaningless task from 8 to 5 without question because the structure demands that it be that way. There's no villain, no mean guy who wants them to live meaningless lives. It's just that the structure, the system demands it, and no one is willing to take on the formidable task of changing the structure just because it's meaningless. But to tear down a factory or to revolt against a government or to avoid repair of a motorcycle because it is a system is to attack effects rather than causes. And as long as the attack is upon the effects only, no change is possible. The true system, the real system, is our present construction of systematic thought itself, rationality itself. And if a factory is torn down by the rationality which produced it is left standing, then that rationality will simply produce another factory. If a revolution destroys a systematic government, but the systematic patterns of thought that produce that government are left intact, then those patterns will repeat themselves in succeeding government. There is so much talk about the system and so little understanding. That's all the motorcycle is, a system of concepts worked out in steel. There is no part in it, no shape in it. Fuck, hold on. And that's all the motorcycle is, a system of concepts worked out in steel. There is no part in it, no shape in it. That is not out of someone's mind. Number 3 tappet is right on 2. One more to go. This had better be it. I've noticed that people who have never worked with steel have trouble seeing this. That the motorcycle is primarily a mental phenomenon. They associate metal with given shapes, pipes, rods, girders, tools, parts, all of them fixed and inviolable, and think of it as primarily physical. But a person who does machining or foundry work or forge work or welding sees steel as having no shape at all. Steel can be any shape if you want, if you are skilled enough, and any shape but the one you want if you are not. Shapes like this tappet are what you arrive at, what you give to the steel. Steel has no more shape than this old pile of dirt on the engine here. These shapes are all out of someone's mind. That's important to see. The steel? Hell, even the steel is out of someone's mind. There's no steel in nature. Anyone from the Bronze Age could have told you that. All nature has a potential for steel. There's nothing else there. But what's potential? That's also in someone's mind. Ghosts. That's really what Phaedrus was talking about when he said that it's all in his mind. All in the mind. It sounds insane when you just jump up and say it without any reference to anything specific like an engine, but when you tie it down to something specific and concrete, the insane sound tends to disappear, and you see that he could have been saying something of importance. The 4th tappet is too loose, which is what I had hoped. I adjusted it. I checked the timing to see that it is still right, and the points are not pitted, and I leave them there. I leave them alone. Screw on the valve covers, replace the plugs, and start it up. The tappet noise is gone, but that doesn't mean much while the oil is still cold. I let it idle while I pack the tools away, and then climb on and head for a cycle shop. A cyclist on the street told us about last night, where they may have a chain adjuster link and a new foot peg rubber. Chris might have nervous feet. His foot pegs keep wearing out. I go a couple blocks, and there's still no tappet noise. It's beginning to sound good. I think it's gone. I won't come to any conclusions until we've gone about 30 miles, though. But until then, right now, the sun is bright, the air is cool, my head is clear, and there's a whole day ahead of us. We're almost to the mountains. It's a good day to be alive. It's this thinner air that does it. You always feel like this when you're getting into higher altitudes. The altitude. That's why the engine's running rich. Sure, that's got to be the reason. We're at 2,500 feet now. I better switch to standard jets. They take only a few minutes to put in, and lean out the idle adjustment a little. We will be getting up higher than this. Under some shady trees, I find Bill's cycle shop, but no Bill. A passerby says he has maybe gone fishing somewhere, leaving his shop wide open. We really are in the West. No one would leave a shop like this open in Chicago or New York. Inside, I see that Bill is a mechanic of the photographic mine school. Everything lying around everywhere: wrenches, screwdrivers, old parts, old motorcycles, new motorcycles, sales, literature, inner tubes, all scattered so thickly and clutteredly that you can't even see the workbenches under them. I couldn't work in conditions like this, but that's just because I'm not photographic-minded like mechanic. Bill can probably turn around and put his hand on any tool in this mess without having to think about where it is. I've seen mechanics like that. Drive you crazy to watch them, but they get the job done just as well as sometimes faster. Move one tool 3 inches to the left, though, and he'll spend days looking for it. Bill arrives with a grin about something. Sure, he's got some jets for my machine and knows right where they are. I'll have to wait a second, though. He's got to close a deal out and back on some Harley parts. I go with him out into the shed and back and see he's selling a whole Harley machine and used parts except for the frame, which the customer already has. He's selling them all for $125. Not a bad price at all. Coming back, I comment, he'll know something about motorcycles before he gets those together. Bill laughs. That's the best way to learn, too. He has jets and a foot peg and rubber, but no chain adjuster link. I get the rubber and jets installed, take the lump of the idle, and ride back to the hotel. Sylvia and John and Chris are just coming down the stairs with their stuff as I arrive. Their faces indicate that they're in some good mood in the same good mood I'm in. We head down the main street and find a restaurant to order steaks for lunch. This is a great town, John says. Really great. Surprised that there were any like this left. I was looking all over this morning. They've got Stockman's bars, high-top boots, silver dollar belt buckles, Levi's, Stetsons, and the whole thing. And it's real. It isn't just Chamber of Commerce stuff. In the bar down the block this morning, they just started talking to me like I've lived here my whole life. We order a round of beers, and I see a horseshoe sign on the wall. We're into Olympia beer territory now, and order that. They must have thought I was off a ranch or something, John continues. And this old guy was talking away about how he wasn't going to live. I wasn't going to give a thing to the goddamn boys, and I really enjoyed that. The ranch was going to go to the girls, because the goddamn boys spent every cent they got down at Susie's. John breaks up with laughter. Sorry he ever raised them, and so on. I thought all that stuff disappeared 30 years ago, but it's still here. The waitress comes from the steaks, and we knife right into them. That work on the cycle has given me an appetite. Something else that ought to interest you, John says. They were talking in the bar about Bozeman, where we're going. They said that the governor in Montana had a list of 50 radical college professors at the college in Bozeman he was going to fire. Then he got killed in a plane crash. That was a long time ago, I answer. These steaks really are good. I didn't know they had a lot of radicals in the state. They've got all kinds of people in the state, I say. But that's just right-wing politics. John helps himself to some more salt. He says a Washington newspaper columnist came through and put it in his column yesterday, and that's why they're all talking about it. The president of the college confirmed it. Did they print the list? I don't know. Do you know any of them? If they had 50 names, I say mine must have been one. They both look at me with some surprise. I don't know much about it, actually. I was him, of course, and with some feeling of falseness because I had to explain a radical in Galatian County, Montana is a little different from radical somewhere else. This was a college, I tell them, where the wife of the President of the United States was actually banned because she was too controversial. Who? Eleanor Roosevelt. Oh my God, John laughs. That must have been wild. They want to hear more, but it's hard to say anything. Then I remember one thing. In a situation like that, a real radical's actually got a perfect setup. He can do almost anything and get away with it because because his opposition have already made asses out of themselves. They'll make him look good no matter what he says. On the way out, we passed a city park in which I noticed last night, and which produced a memory concurrence, just a vision of looking up into some trees. He had slept on that park bench one night on his way through to Bozeman. That's why I didn't recognize that forest yesterday. He'd come through at night on his way to college at Bozeman.